When a rapper claims he's more influential than one of hip-hop's greatest legends, you'd expect the internet to explode. But when Jim Jones declared he was bigger than Nas in 2025, it triggered something far more dangerous than Twitter debates. What started as podcast banter became a federal case reminder, a gym challenge, and a masterclass in how 50 Cent plays chess while everyone else plays checkers. By the time the smoke cleared, careers were questioned, old wounds reopened, and one man's silence spoke louder than all the shouting combined. It all began with what seemed like harmless podcast talk. Jim Jones appeared on Fat Joe and Jadakiss' show, where Joe stirred the pot by mentioning a young fan who compared Jim to Nas. Instead of deflecting or showing respect, Jim grabbed the microphone and ran with it. He admitted he once idolized Nas, calling him one of his favorite rappers growing up, but then dropped the bomb that shattered hip-hop's peace. Jim claimed that kids today gravitate toward him more than the Queensbridge legend, that his influence runs deeper in the streets, and that his track record speaks for itself. But Jim wasn't done making waves. He doubled down with a statement that had fans rewinding their speakers. He positioned himself as not just relevant, but more influential than the man behind Illmatic, claiming that while Nas was nice in high school, he never had the street impact that Jim maintains today. The audacity was breathtaking. Here was a member of Dipset essentially saying he'd surpassed one of rap's Mount Rushmore faces, and he wasn't backing down from the claim. The internet's reaction was immediate and brutal. Fans started pulling up charts, streaming numbers, and critical acclaim comparisons that made Jim's claims look questionable at best. But instead of retreating, Jim Jones decided to take his message to an even bigger platform, one where his words would reach millions and create the kind of controversy that defines careers. Shannon Sharpe wasn't having any of Jim's claims when he appeared on Nightcap. The Hall of Fame tight end opened with a question that cut straight to the heart of the matter, asking Jim if he was smoking when he made those Nas comparisons. What followed was one of the most heated podcast debates in recent memory, with Jim refusing to back down and Shannon defending Nas like his legacy depended on it. Jim explained that while he respected Nas's early work, particularly Illmatic, he felt the Queensbridge rapper never maintained the cultural dominance that people claimed. He argued that Nas always came up second to Jay-Z and DMX in terms of real influence, and that after the movie Belly, he lost connection with the streets. Jim's confidence was unshakable, as he insisted that in 2025, he was still rapping at a high capacity while Nas enjoyed his retirement money. Shannon wasn't buying it for a second. He challenged Jim's lyrical abilities directly, telling him he couldn't mess with Nas on any level and questioning whether Jim was on something stronger than confidence. The exchange grew heated when Jim started deflecting by questioning Shannon's knowledge of hip-hop and suggesting the only reason he was invited on Nightcap was for views and drama. Things took an unexpected turn when the conversation shifted from rap skills to physical fitness. Shannon, clearly frustrated with Jim's dismissive attitude, challenged him to prove his claims in the gym. What started as a debate about musical influence became a bizarre challenge about who could work out harder, with Jim accepting immediately and posting videos of himself doing calisthenics while taunting Shannon about ducking the challenge. The sight of a 57-year-old rapper flexing on a 57-year-old former NFL player might have been comedy gold, but it also revealed something deeper about Jim's desperation to prove his relevance in any arena possible. When your rap credentials get questioned, apparently the gym becomes the fallback battlefield. But while Jim was busy challenging Shannon to workouts and posting gym videos, someone far more dangerous was watching from the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to remind everyone why some conversations should never be started. The moment 50 Cent decided to get involved, this whole situation shifted from entertainment to something much more serious. The tension between Nas and Jim Jones didn't start with podcast comments in 2025. Their history traces back to 2002, when hip-hop was a different beast and beefs could make or break careers overnight. The story begins with Nas doing something that shocked the hip-hop world. He randomly dissed Cam'ron during a Hot 97 rant, calling his album whack for reasons that nobody could understand. Cam'ron was blindsided by the attack. He was a huge Nas fan, someone who looked up to the Queensbridge legend and never saw the diss coming. But in the early 2000s, when someone of Nas's caliber came for you, staying silent wasn't an option. Cam had to respond, and when Cam went to war, Jim Jones was always his most loyal soldier. Jim threw himself into the beef with the intensity of someone defending family. He made it personal, threatening to smack the kufi off Nas's head and keeping that same energy across multiple mixtapes and tracks. Songs like We Fly High and It's More Than Music carry carried subliminal shots, and Jim's freestyle game became a weapon aimed directly at Queensbridge. The beef escalated when both crews got involved. Nas's Bravehearts and Dipset started trading shots across mixtapes, with Jim leading the charge for his team. He was young, hungry, and ready to go to war for Cameron and everything Dipset represented. The irony wasn't lost on anyone that Jim was battling someone he'd once worshipped, but loyalty to the set trumped everything else. Eventually, the beef cooled down, but the scars remained. Jim never got that sit-down conversation with Nas that might have cleared the air. The respect was still there underneath, but so was the competitive spirit that never truly died. Fast forward over 2 decades, and that same energy resurfaced when Jim felt confident enough to compare his legacy to the man he once threatened to physically confront. Understanding this history makes Jim's recent claims even more loaded. This wasn't just random podcast talk. It was the continuation of a decades-old tension, with Jim finally feeling like he had the platform and confidence to settle old scores. But he forgot that in hip-hop, some people have longer memories and deeper pockets, full of receipts. When 50 Cent caught wind of Jim's better than Nas claims, he didn't need to search for ammunition. Curtis Jackson has been keeping files on Jim Jones for years, and he knew exactly which buttons to push to turn this musical debate into something far more damaging. Instead of engaging in rap battle rhetoric, 50 went straight for the throat with a reminder that had Jim's followers questioning everything. 50 posted a simple but devastating message calling Jim Individual One and referencing old federal transcripts. To casual observers, it might have seemed like random trolling, but anyone familiar with recent hip-hop history understood the implications immediately. 50 was bringing up the Tekashi 69 trial and Jim's alleged involvement in a wiretapped phone conversation that prosecutors used as evidence. The reference to Individual One wasn't accidental. During Tekashi's 2019 trial for racketeering charges, prosecutors played a recorded phone call between someone identified as Individual One and convicted 9 Trey member Jamel Mel Murda Jones. In that call, the voice allegedly belonging to Jim Jones could be heard discussing Tekashi 69 and saying that Shorty needed to be violated for disrespecting the gang. The conversation was chilling in its implications. The voice on the recording talked about Tekashi no longer being a gang member and needing consequences for his actions. For anyone listening to those federal tapes, it sounded like a man orchestrating street justice against someone who had fallen out of favor with dangerous people. Yet somehow, while other 9 Trey members faced serious prison time, Jim Jones was never charged. 50 Cent's social media post was calculated to remind everyone of this suspicious timing. He didn't need to spell out the implications. The streets and the internet were smart enough to connect the dots. When federal cases take down entire gangs, but somehow miss someone who was allegedly caught on tape giving orders, people start asking uncomfortable questions about cooperation and immunity deals. The genius of 50's move was its simplicity. He didn't need to write paragraphs or make accusations. Just 2 words, Individual One, were enough to shift the entire conversation from Jim's rap skills to much more serious territory. Suddenly, Jim's claims about street credibility and influence took on a different meaning when viewed through the lens of federal investigations and suspicious legal immunity. Jim Jones tried to brush off 50 Cent's posts, but the damage was already spreading across social media like wildfire. The Individual One label started trending, and old clips from the Tekashi trial began resurfacing. Hip-hop fans love conspiracy theories, and the idea that Jim had somehow avoided federal charges while his associates went to prison provided plenty of material for speculation. Instead of addressing the serious implications directly, Jim pivoted to what he does best: social media theatrics and Jim flexing. He posted throwback photos with captions about people lying and going back to sleep, but the defensive nature of his responses only fueled more speculation. When someone starts posting workout videos after being called a federal informant, it doesn't exactly scream innocence. Jim's response strategy seemed borrowed from the Donald Trump playbook: deny everything, attack the accusers, and create enough noise to distract from the original allegations. He claimed 50 was lying, suggested people were jealous of his success, and tried to turn the conversation back to his gym challenge with Shannon Sharpe. But the internet had already moved on to pulling federal transcripts and analyzing timelines. The most telling part of Jim's response was what he didn't say. He never directly addressed the wiretapping allegations or explained why he wasn't charged alongside his associates. Instead, he focused on attacking 50's credibility and suggesting that successful people always face false accusations. For someone usually quick with clever comebacks, his deflection tactics felt desperate. Meanwhile, 50 Cent sat back and watched the chaos unfold without saying another word. He'd accomplished his goal with minimal effort, proving once again that in the information age, the right receipt at the right time is worth worth more than the cleverest diss track. While Jim was doing pull-ups and posting inspirational quotes, 50 was probably planning his next move or simply enjoying watching someone else's world burn. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. Jim was working overtime to control the narrative through social media posts and podcast appearances, while 50 had effectively ended the conversation with 2 words and a federal transcript. It was a masterclass in strategic warfare, showing how real power moves in silence until the perfect moment to strike. While Jim Jones was busy fighting multiple battles across social media and podcast platforms, one person remained conspicuously absent from the chaos: Nas himself. The Queensbridge legend's silence wasn't accidental or coincidental. It was the most devastating response he could have given to someone desperately seeking his attention and validation. Nas's refusal to engage spoke volumes about how he viewed Jim's claims. When you're dealing with someone beneath your level, sometimes the most powerful move is to act like they don't exist. Every hour that passed without a Nas response made Jim's claims look more desperate and his attention-seeking more obvious to everyone watching. The hip-hop community understood the dynamics immediately. Legends don't respond to every challenger because acknowledgement gives credibility to claims that don't deserve it. Nas has nothing to prove to Jim Jones or anyone else questioning his legacy. His catalog speaks for itself, his influence is undeniable, and his bank account reflects decades of success at the highest levels. Jim's increasing desperation became more apparent as Nas's silence stretched on. He started posting about how he'd made Nas viral again and claiming credit for generating more conversation about the Queensbridge rapper than anyone had in years. But taking credit for making someone famous by disrespecting them is like an arsonist bragging about giving the fire department work. The irony wasn't lost on observers that Jim was essentially proving Nas's point through his own behavior. Someone secure in their legacy doesn't need to constantly post about it, defend it on multiple platforms, or challenge people to gym workouts to prove their relevance. Real influence moves in silence and speaks through results, not through social media campaigns. As days passed without any Nas response, even Jim's supporters started questioning the wisdom of his approach. When you claim to be more influential than someone but need them to respond to you to feel validated, you've already lost the argument. Nas's silence was the equivalent of a master chess player refusing to play checkers with someone who brought a crayon to the match. The most damaging aspect of Nas's non-response was how it highlighted the difference between manufactured controversy and genuine respect. While Jim was generating headlines through outrageous claims and social media feuds, Nas was probably in the studio working on his next project or handling business that actually matters. The contrast painted a picture of 2 artists at completely different stages of their careers and levels of security. For Jim Jones, this entire controversy revealed the dangerous game of seeking relevance through controversy rather than through artistic achievement. When your biggest recent headlines come from disrespecting legends and challenging TV hosts to work out battles, it suggests that the music might not be hitting the way it used to. Real influence doesn't need constant validation or social media campaigns to prove its existence. As this saga played out across multiple platforms, it became clear that Jim Jones had inadvertently exposed more about himself than he intended. His claims about being more influential than Nas weren't just wrong. They were desperately transparent attempts to generate the kind of attention and respect that comes naturally to actual legends. The federal allegations brought up by 50 Cent added a layer of seriousness that transformed the entire conversation from entertainment to genuine concern about credibility and street authenticity. When someone's biggest claim to influence might be connected to cooperating with federal investigations, their street credentials become questionable at best. Shannon Sharpe's willingness to defend Nas and challenge Jim's claims showed how the broader hip-hop community viewed this situation. Even people outside the music industry recognized the absurdity of comparing Jim Jones's impact to that of someone who created Illmatic and maintained relevance for over 3 decades. The Jim Challenge subplot revealed Jim's desperation to win any battle, since he was clearly losing the ones that actually mattered. When your argument shifts from rap skills to push-up contests, you've essentially admitted defeat in the original discussion. It's the equivalent of a chess player challenging their opponent to arm wrestling after getting checkmated. Perhaps most importantly, this entire situation demonstrated the difference between temporary noise and lasting legacy. Jim Jones generated weeks of controversy and social media engagement, but none of it enhanced his artistic reputation or long-term standing in hip-hop culture. Meanwhile, Nas's silence maintained his dignity while reminding everyone why legends don't engage in public disputes with people seeking attention. The real winner in this entire situation might be 50 Cent, who managed to redirect the conversation with minimal effort while reminding everyone that he still has the receipts to end careers when necessary. His strategic use of the individual one reference showed how information warfare works in the social media age. age, where the right document at the right time can be more destructive than any diss track. For observers of hip-hop culture, this controversy provided valuable lessons about respect, legacy, and the dangers of seeking relevance through controversy rather than artistic achievement. Jim Jones may have gotten his headlines, but at the cost of exposing his desperation and giving ammunition to people who remember his most questionable moments. As this story continues to develop, one thing remains certain. When someone needs to constantly explain why they're relevant, they've already answered the question for everyone else. True influence speaks for itself, while manufactured controversy reveals its own emptiness. In the end, Jim Jones didn't prove he was more influential than Nas. He proved exactly why he isn't, and probably never will be. The silence from Queensbridge continues, and that silence might be the most devastating diss track Nas never had to record.